we're going to go ahead and get started. We're the presenters, as Nikki introduced us. My name is Travis. I've been with OCG coming up on 2 years. I'm the proposal analyst that supports the computer science department, the mathematics department, and I work with Ceres.
And I'm Paige. I joined the Office of Contracts and Grants with Travis. We got hired as a little cohort, which is great for learning budgeting, because we all know this is a tricky subject, why we're here. I support the physics department and work with Ceres. I actually liked math when I was a student, and so I found myself gravitating towards budgeting. I've been helping Ali Fisher, who many of you probably know, do budget training over the last probably 6 months. And so that's how we found ourselves here today.
All right. So here's the overview of what we'll be covering. We'll review some of the recent changes and some of the upcoming changes to our the latest version of the estimation tool. We'll show you those changes I think in the email that Nikki sent out. She discussed that we'll be actually getting into the Excel spreadsheet itself. We're going to take a look at some of the tabs and some of the built-in tools that the S tool has. And then the second half will be most of the live demonstrations. I'll demonstrate some of the new changes specifically for modifying the S tool for subrecipients, and Paige will demonstrate budgeting in foreign currency. We should also have time at the end for questions and feedback. If you have some questions as you go, feel free to throw those in the chat feature as well. All right, so let's get into this, the recent changes. So some of this is functional, some of it's aesthetic, hopefully a combination of both that makes it easier to navigate and to use the estimation tool, make your jobs as easy as possible. All right, so we've moved the title box, so that way when you collapse down, especially anything past year 1, if you collapse the S tool down, that title box should be unaffected. We've added a couple of drop downs specifically within the indirect costs section. We'll show you those. We've hidden the sub F&A cost line and removed some of the NIH specific labels related to subs. Some of that's still there, some of it's just hidden so that hopefully it streamlines that a little bit more. We've moved the quote number of subs cell closer to where the subs are actually budgeted, just as hopefully it makes it a little more straightforward and streamlined there, and then rearranged how MTDC and F&A appear within the S tool. So here we go. All right. Hopefully everyone is now everyone is seeing my estimation tool. All right, so same additional information up top. Like I said, we've moved the title over here so that it stays there when you have the out years hidden. Here's that number of subs box in that subcontracts under other direct costs. So like I said, you don't have to go hunting for it down here. I've budgeted and forgotten to add a 1 there, and it throws the whole budget off. So hopefully with it being here directly related to the subs, it should just be highlighted a little bit more clearly. That sub F&A line is still there if you need it for sponsor specific, but we found that it was either throwing some folks off or wondering, well, there's a cell there, do I need to add something with it hidden kind of as a default? Hopefully that provides a little less confusion for you all. And then this, we've again kind of streamlined some of the bottom line calculations. Under F&A, this is where those new drop downs are, so you can select research or instruction. That'll automatically change the MTDC over here, and likewise change from on campus to off campus with a click of a button. All right. All right, utilizing some of the tabs and built-in tools.
Yes, so you guys have heard us talk about the estimation tool as being smart. And we want to cover what some of those smart features are that are supposed to make things easier. We just want to highlight them so everyone knows that they're present. So the first thing we're going to talk about are our travel tables. This is the second tab in the estimation tool, and we'll show you where it is, what it looks like, how to use it. This pulls information directly from the main page. So when you fill in the purpose for your travel, the number of days, costs, people, etc., that information is going to move over for you so that you don't have to prepare tables for yourself, especially with NSF who requires these breakouts. This just makes it much simpler. These breakouts do meet all federal sponsor requirements for detail, so you don't need to modify them except for to hide unused years. So in the case of this project we're showing you, there's only years 1 through 3. So we just go ahead and hide 4 and 5. And now you have a table that's formatted to copy and paste directly into Word or LaTeX. Our office doesn't have a lot of expertise with LaTeX, so we do have some instructions in here if your researcher prefers to utilize that software. So we have it for domestic as well as foreign. It sums total travel costs for each and overall, so that you can easily throw this in your budget justification and call travel set, wipe your hands clean. And so the next thing we're going to talk about are 2 additional tabs that we have. There's the budget form tab and the industry tab. Both of these are abbreviations of our full estimation tool that reduce the visible information. We would use these if the sponsor doesn't require things like our fringe rate be disclosed. That information is public record, but if we don't have to put it on there, sometimes the preference is to just leave it off for the time being. It also does sum down some of our categories. So the budget form can be used as our proposal budget of record if the sponsor doesn't have a format that they need us to use. So if we're going to look at that 3rd tab, this is our budget form. It has most of the same detail. We still have individual salary totals. We still have an overall fringe total, but the categories themselves have less detail. So if you look at travel, we now just have total for domestic, total for international, which is what most sponsors require we provide them in their budget forms anyways. So this one can be used to send to a lead when we're a sub on a project, or if you're working with an industry partner, this is a good option for you. The next tab is our industry specific tab. It does take most of the detail out. We've found that some sponsors do not love this format. They want more detail. But if you need a very high level, broad overview, this is an option for you as well. Or if you just want to look at like how much is going to labor, how much is going to travel as a proportion of our overall total, this gives you a quick snapshot. Great. And then the final tool we're going to be talking about is our IDC addendum. Most of you have probably heard of this, or maybe you've been asked to sign it or prepare one. So this tool is used when a sponsor requires that we use a rate other than our federally negotiated rate, which on campus is 54%, off campus is 26%. If we're working with a foundation, a nonprofit, we'll often see this. They'll ask us to do 10% of our total direct costs for our indirect cost. And so in that case, we need to have sign off from the appropriate department personnel to okay moving forward. So something useful to note is that this auto populates most of the administrative information right from that main tab. It does need to be signed off by chair or equivalent. We are going through the process of revising our IDC policies. That's with Rio right now, but you will see in the example, there's a spot for an ADR, which is the Associate Dean for Research. That is not yet in place. That does not need to be signed off yet, but there will be very clear communication from OCG and Rio when that will be required. So looking at the form itself, from that main page, it's already taken our PI's name, our proposal title, the record number, and auto-populated many of these fields for us. The things that we still need to fill in before sending this for signature are a primary unit. So for me, that's physics or series. For you, it will be your home department more than likely. Sponsor name already carried over. So we're going to come down to where it is proposed IDC base and rate. So the base, you can see a whole mix of things. Most commonly, we'll see total direct costs. Occasionally, I see MTDC defined the way the feds define it, removing capital equipment, tuition, all but 25K of subs. But I've also seen from foundations usually a modified version of that, where they say you can charge indirect costs, but not on any of your subs, but everything else is fine. That information should be publicly available. It should be on the funding opportunity announcement or published to their website. So just make sure that we know what we are allowed to charge on. We fill that in here, and then the rate will also be published in our funding opportunity announcement or on the website. I've seen 10%, I've seen 15%. There are federal sponsors that require us to use something other than our negotiated rate. An example is USDA NEPA. I personally have not had the pleasure of working with them yet, but their rate comes to like 40-something% of MTDC or TDC. Once we have that nailed down, we put that information here so that when our chair or institute director is signing off, they're very clear on what we're agreeing to. Below that, we have this question that is new and is the IDC loss contributing to cost share? The default answer here is no. Most of our projects do not have cost share. If you work in a department that does have a lot of cost share, this is one that you will want to pay close attention to. Sponsors do restrict us from using this as a contribution to cost share at times. So we want, again, to be very certain before saying like, yeah, we'll just count that as part of our required 20% cost share, whatever the requirement may be. But for most of us, this is going to be a no. Below this, we have a section to mark why we're agreeing to a rate other than our own. Most of the time, it's going to be a nonprofit organization that has a formal written policy. So it needs to be published or it needs to be in writing somewhere for us to move forward in this process. So that's what I would click most of the time, but we do have several other options to cover situations. Below that, we have a list of costs that may be already included on our budget that are of benefit to your department, which is essentially encouraging them to agree to a reduced rate because the project is going to be beneficial for one of these reasons. Beyond we're doing amazing science at the university, our information is cutting edge, but also we're supporting a graduate student, or part of our administrative support is going to be covered on this. So we want to make sure they have that information as well as they're making their decision, especially because we are seeing a trend of these reduced IDC projects being more closely reviewed. And a decision really not just being like, oh, okay, yes. Now it's more, well, how many projects do we have where we've agreed to give up part of our IDC? Because especially like our institutes need those funds to cover their administrative costs. So now we're looking at really solid justification of why this project should move forward. And that's what this last box is for. Anything you want to tell your chair or director about why they should sign off, you can add here. So once all of that is done, you would print this page and most likely route through DocuSign. And it is formatted to fit nicely in 8.5 by 11. You shouldn't have to do any funky formatting on it. And then you would obviously send it for signature. Right now we have 2 spots. We have our chair or director, and then we have that ADR. Again, the ADR signature is not yet required, but it will be moving forward. At this point, you can just put NA on that line and send it to the chair for signature, and then you are set on reduced IDC projects.
All right, thanks, Paige. All right, we're going to be demonstrating some of the live math here by examining the subrecipient section. All right. So we're going to do a little example and show a special case that we've seen a little bit more recently. So back to the S tool. In this case, we're just going to use one sub. $30,000. As we said, once you enter the number of subs and the sub cost, it'll do all the calculations for you. A special case is if you have less than $25,000, either in year 1 or spread apart in year 1 and 2. If you have less than $25,000 in costs, that'll affect the calculation. So let's say you do have 15,000 in year 1 and 15,000 in year 2. So you meet that 25,000 threshold somewhere in year 2. So we have to manually adjust the formula for year 1 and for year 2 here. So just come down to MTDC. You'll notice this portion, 25,000 times this cell, that's taking that number of sub cell, and it's accounting for that first $25,000 in cost. Since we don't have that, we have to manually adjust this. So the easiest way is to take this portion out and just add it back in year 1. So that'll take care of MTDC in year 1. We still have to account for that other $10,000 here in year 2. So we come here and adjust this. So we account for that 25,000 again, minus this cell again. And I'll show you why we're going to the cell as opposed to just directly entering that value. All right, and it'll adjust the formula if it's missing a parentheses. So the reason we recommend doing this by referencing back immediately to that cell is, let's say the sub comes back, figuring out what the actual costs are. It'll account for that as well. So like I said, this one is one that has tricked me up in the past. I just now know that anytime there's less than 25,000 for a sub cost in year 1 or year 1 and 2 or anywhere in the project, then it's worth coming back in here and examining that formula. I have a little cheat sheet for myself that I have to go back to each time. And I showed you this before. I'll show you again, just that if you're working with a sponsor like NIH that requires you to break out the indirect costs as well as the direct costs, this is where that line is. Not a whole lot of fanciness there.
And to quickly touch on why we had those breakouts for subs in the first place, for people that don't work with NIH a lot, myself included, NIH caps projects at like a set threshold for every year. And so to give a little bit of extra wiggle room to lead institutions, they remove the cost of sub FNA out of that capped total. So we used to have a standard where we had a subline, direct cost, FNA cost, but that was causing a lot of confusion as people were learning to use this tool, because for the most part, it's not helpful to break it out in that way. It looks a little bit messier, especially if you're supposed to be hitting nice round totals like $100,000 and you've broken it out into 2 things. It just takes a little extra time, a little extra calculating. to know if you are on total, if everything is copied over correctly, if we were breaking them out, and there's not a benefit to it unless you're working pretty much with NIH is the only sponsor that I know, that it would be helpful to have the distinction. So we've just collapsed that down, make it simple, make it aesthetically pleasing, because we're trying to make our tools not just look nice, but be easy to use. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is foreign currency. This one is definitely not a super common budgeting situation. I personally do it somewhat frequently because I have PIs that work with an organization in Japan. So we work in yen a couple times a year. And for a long time, I had to remind myself every time what I needed to do. So we wanted to do a breakdown for you guys in case you find yourself in a situation where you're going to be budgeting in foreign currency. Make sure we have all the documentation, all the correct justifications. And so that's what we're going to do here. The first thing you need is a conversion rate, right? The university's policy mandates that we use Wells Fargo's exchange rate. So we've given you the link here. If you go ahead and click into that, we'll show you what we're going to be using today. So we are going to do our example based on Japanese yen, since I'm working in it right now, actually. And so you'll go ahead and select the currency that we're going to be budgeting in. So we're going to do yen. And then Instinct says, put $1 in there. It'll be so easy. Wells Fargo won't let you do that. I don't know why. No one there has told me why. So I just put in $10 now, nice and even. And then you'll just divide the total in yen that you have there by 10. And now you have your conversion 1 USD to 1 Japanese yen. Because conversion rates or exchange rates fluctuate constantly, you'll see that this rate is going to be different than the rate I have in the example budget. We need to print off that page from Wells Fargo and save it to the InfoEd record. So we have documentation of why, in this case, I used 104.89 yen for $1, but today it was like, what, 103 something. So I have the date here and I have my yen. I've printed off the Wells Fargo page for my records for the InfoEd, and we're good to go. So if we look back to the PowerPoint, we'll go over the other considerations that we need to keep in mind before I'll show you how to actually put this into the estimation tool. So the 2 line items that need to be included when you're working in foreign currency are a foreign currency contingency fee, which is a mouthful. And the way that I have explained this to my PIs that work in foreign currency is that it's not a fee that the university is taking, it is more of a reserve. So over 5 years, we've collected information on how much exchange rates fluctuate over the life of our projects and how much money is potentially unavailable to the project because exchange rates changed from the day of budgeting, from year 1's payment to year 2 to 3, etc. And so we've determined that 15% will cover those fluctuations, and that is a total project cost. So that's our direct plus indirect times 15%, and that's what this contingency fee comes down to. It's important to note that if all of that money is not needed to cover fluctuations, it will be reallocated and available to our PIs to complete the scope of the project. That money is not held by the university in any way. It goes to the project to make sure that the science is done and that our researchers have the resources that they need. If we have a sponsor that allows a contingency fee, but not at 15%, we will accept that. We just need to make sure we have documentation of that difference. So we need their policy, or we need an email from their contract officer say that we're also going to put in InfoEd as documentation of why we made the choices that we made on the budget. So the other thing that we're going to talk about are bank transaction fees. These fees come from the bank the university banks with. When we have deposits that come in that are not in USD, we're charged a fee for those deposits. We know that it's $50 per deposit. And so when we are unsure of how many deposits are going to be made over the course of a project, we default to monthly to make sure no money has to come out of those scientific resources to pay for something that's administrative. If we know for sure that we're going to be paid quarterly, we can put it in 4 times a year. If we know we're going to be paid up front, we can put it in once and call it good. But yeah, when we're unsure, we're going to do 12 times 50. And that will be our bank transaction fees. Those go under other direct costs, and you'll see that I have a line item built into our example budget. The last thing that you need before we can submit a budget in foreign currency is the foreign exchange risk acceptance form. Another mouthful. This has to be signed off by chair or equivalent to ensure that the correct administrative personnel are aware that we're taking on a project that will not be paid in US dollars. For the same reason we have the contingency fee, we get this form signed off because there is a risk to accepting something that's in yen or euros when we don't know what the strength of the dollar will do relative to those currencies over a 5-year project that's maybe not awarded for a year. So we're talking about far enough into the future that we can't be certain. This form is found on OCG's website. So if you click into this link, we'll show you what the actual form looks like. Perfect. So yeah, if you go to OCG's website, the forms page, and come down to award management, that's where our foreign exchange risk acceptance form lives. So you're just going to say, yes, no, there has been a contingency budgeted. Unless this project has not gone through the standard OCG process, yes, there's going to be a contingency included unless the sponsor says, no, we won't accept that. So yes, no, we're going to have our PI sign off that they are accepting the risk that potentially comes with this, their chair or equivalent. And then we need a speed type that will cover any discrepancies. So if the exchange rate changes wildly, more than the 15% can accommodate, we need to know that the scope of work can still be done because we're making a legal commitment to our sponsor that we will complete a certain amount of science for them. And so we need to know where that money will come from in the case that the budget does not cover it. So now that we've talked about the different elements, we're going to go into the estimation tool. I'm going to show you what it looks like to actually have a budget that's prepared in foreign currency. So you notice here we have the cost share columns unhidden. We have one for every year of the project, and these columns aren't smart. They don't have formulas built into them, like when you open the S tool on its own. So we're going to repurpose them. Anytime that you need extra columns, these columns are here for you. You need to put in formulas yourself, but we're just going to change it from cost share to foreign currency and use it for the purpose that we need today. So we have foreign currency. Here's 1 through 3, and then total. And we already showed you where we have our little conversion rate box off to the side. So we have 1 USD equals 104.89 yen. That's from the 1st of this month. It has changed. I looked at it this morning, but that's why we print the Wells Fargo page. So we've already done our budgeting in USD. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into these shaded foreign currency columns. And we're going to do equals the cell in USD. So we're just going to click on it for a reference times the conversion cell. Easy peasy. So now we know how much $11,489 is in yen. You would want to then drag down your formula by that little corner piece. But if you do that, the problem we run into is that the reference to the conversion rate cell also moves. So if you click into one of these boxes, if you double click, it will show you what cells it's working off of. Now we've moved down. So we're going to undo that. And I'm going to show you guys the trick that I only recently figured out as a way to not have to deal with that. So what we're going to do is we still have USD times conversion. If you go into the formula bar and you click the conversion cell, if you push F4, that makes it an absolute reference. And that's what those little dollar signs mean. Absolute reference means that when you drag this down, that cell is locked column and row. It will not change no matter where you drag this formula, which is such a huge time saver. As you see, now we're doing USD times that same conversion cell over and over. Go ahead and remove those zeros. And now year one salaries are done. They are converted over and we are good there. If you notice the fringe auto calculated, that does have the formula that our white columns have. For consistency, my preference is to do USD times conversion factor again, just because, especially in out years, we have very, very odd little percentage with multiple decimals because we're now inflating by 2%. So we'll go ahead and drag that formula down. And then we have our yen equivalents to dollars for that section as well. So I've already done years 2 and 3. And if you scroll down while I'm talking you through, Travis will finish converting our travel and other expenses. And I see we have some questions in the chat. If they are about foreign currency, we can talk about that now. Let me read through. So Nikki Joy asked if the $50 bank fees charged against the 15% currency contingency. So we include those $50 bank fees in other direct costs, and then the 15% is applied on top of that because the 15% is all of our direct costs and indirect costs together. So I guess it would be charged against it would be charged on the $50 bank fees. Does that clarify the question? Yep, perfect. Great. And now we are down to the section where we can talk about bank fees. So if you see here, I've repurposed a line item under other direct costs as our bank transaction fees. For this project, say we don't know, we're just going to do 50 for the cost times 12 for all years. This is a standard amount, so you don't have to inflate it in out years. If you wanted to, out of an abundance of caution, you could. I do not personally in my budgets. But if you're someone who inflates travel and inflates materials and supplies, you want to do it for consistency, perfectly acceptable, understandable. So we're finishing out converting those. And then we'll talk about the foreign currency contingency fee. So that line is something that you can choose to hide. I keep it hidden in all of my budgets that are not foreign currency, just for clarity's sake, so that no one asks, like, why is there a line for this? So most of the time this is hidden, but what we're going to do here is include that 15% on total project costs. So we're going to do equals, and then total cost, line 206 times 0.15, or you can do times 15 with the percent symbol. Excel reads them the same. So we're just going to go ahead and hit enter. That gives us our contingency fee. That last line, section K, sums them together, and that gives us our total project costs, including that reserve. So yes, we're finishing up doing the conversion. And then the last thing we'll talk about is a new feature to the estimation tool. One of our revisions is this total committed cost share cell. This will show even if your cost share columns are hidden, which is a good checkpoint to make sure that something hasn't been dragged into that column on accident. In our case, we've repurposed the cost share columns to be foreign currency. So we're going to change this label to make sure that we're being accurate. We're going to say total foreign currency. And if you notice, it's formatted for dollars right now. To change that, we're going to right click, format cell. This one is already formatted for currency, but if it weren't, you would pick that. And then from this drop down, they have currencies for places that I have never been, certainly, but they do have Japanese yen in here. You're going to go ahead and select that, push OK. And now we have the appropriate currency symbol. Instead of a dollar sign, we have the yen sign. So that is a ton of information. That's why we're recording this. You guys can come back, watch that again. Remember how to do the absolute references so that when you drag down, it's going back to that same conversion cell. But we went ahead and dragged down. All of it is now dollars and yen side by side, easy to see and understand. We added our bank fees, we added our contingency fee, and now we have total in foreign currency, total in USD. And then once this was all done, we would send off that foreign exchange risk acceptance form. So high level overview, but yes, definitely something you guys can come back and reference. Going back over to our PowerPoint, there is language to be included in the budget justification about those additional line items, things that we don't normally have in there. This language is not in our template because foreign currency it's so infrequent that this is not part of our standard, but this language your PA has access to. You guys will have access to this PowerPoint after the session has ended, and you can copy and paste this into your template if you'd like, or into a Word document. So you have access and can add it. If you don't do that, your PA will know to either provide it to you or add it to your budget justification when you guys send it for review. So this covers, this is a university policy. It's 15% for this reason. The money is available to the project. And then those bank exchange fees of $50, either monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever it may be. So that is the quick explanation of how we prepare our budgets in foreign currency. And if it is something that you're not totally comfortable with yet, you can do your first pass at it, send it to your PA for review. They have this information and knowledge. They'll look it over and let you know if it's set, good to go, or if there are any modifications that need to happen. So that is our last planned topic for today. So we are ready to open up to questions. And then we have a fun whiteboard slide for you guys after that. So we do have a blank copy of our cost estimation tool on our website. The version you guys saw today is kind of a little sneak peek for those new changes. That version will be sent to you with the slide deck. So it's kind of like early access. Feel free to share it with other DRAs that work in your department. Remember that ADR signature, it's not yet required. We're just going to do an NA on IDC addendums, and that will be published to our website as soon as the IDC policy is finalized by Rio. But we will be sending you guys this newer version of the tool. We do have business practices written out on how to use the tool found at this link. If you're ever looking for a written reference, you don't want to watch through this whole video. We have that there for you, and my inbox is always open. Travis's is always open. If you have questions, feel free to contact us, contact your PA. We're here to help. We're here to be a resource to you and give you the knowledge so that you guys feel like you know how to move forward with this tool in hand.